All right, welcome everyone to today's webinar. This is actually the fourth webinar in our series. We've been covering a couple of topics with regard to HPC, so high performance computing and data centers, etc. We've covered topics like HPC immersion cooled. We've also covered very specific topic regarding IT hardware design considerations for immersion cooling. We've also covered in our last session, which proved very, very popular, which was the future of power efficient data centers. This time here, we're going to focus on what is possibly the most fundamental asset in data centers and HP operations today, the people. Our special guest that we have here today, that we're very honored to have here today, will share with us his long experience in this and other industries, consulting and also in non-profit sectors. Leaves him very poised for where he is today and all of that experience coming together. And he's helping us to understand how to address the skills shortage that the data center industry is experiencing and the importance of the human factor in the 21st century data center. We'll come to our esteemed guest in one moment. I am briefly going to introduce myself first. I am Diarmuid Daltoon. I look after worldwide sales and marketing for Submer. Most of you know me from hosting and cloud, and I have been near or next to or in data centers for a lot of my life. I was just recalling a couple of very funny stories, which hopefully Jeff will get a chance to exchange a little bit later on. Just letting everybody know, you can, of course, reach out to me at any stage. You can reach out to anybody here who's taking part via my phone number, email address, Twitter handle, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Please, you choose the channel and we'll be there. One favor I have to ask all of you is please that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. As you know, we are doing this every month. We may change the frequency or something at some stage, but this is important also to those who are watching this recorded. We really appreciate you subscribing, and you'll get notified of any new content that we publish, which will be in and around immersion cooling, HPC, data center, education, etc. All right. We have reserved 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes for questions and answers at the end of this session. And together with Matteo Mezzanotte, who's our PR and communications manager, we're going to address as many of those questions as possible. I would encourage you, please, to type your questions into the chat section to the right of the YouTube live at any time during the presentation, and I will be reminding you of this a little bit later on. So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce to you Mr. Jeff Omelchuck, our esteemed guest for this session. Jeff, I'm going to try this. Jeff has worked for over 37 years across industries. I think we've covered that already, but you've always had a focus on technology. Jeff is currently the Executive Director at Infrastructuremasons, a professional association where tech leaders connect, grow, and give back to the infrastructure industry and community. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Diarmuid. How are you?
I'm not too bad, thank you very much.
Good.
Enjoying being able to do this from Barcelona, and you are in Portland, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right, lovely Portland, Oregon, where it's supposed to hit 90 degrees later this week, Fahrenheit, which is crazy for mid-May, but I'm glad to be here with you all.
Excellent. Jeff, maybe just a quick question to you on what I've covered. I tried to cover 37 years of a career within 2 sentences. I think that's practically impossible. Maybe you can give us more of a sense or more of a feeling to whom we're really speaking today.
Oh, wow. Gosh, after getting a bachelor's degree in engineering, I moved to the Silicon Valley to seek my fortune and spent the next 10 or 12 years in computer manufacturing, primarily electronics manufacturing in the Silicon Valley. Moved to Oregon with a computer company and I took a master's while I was in California and then moved to Oregon and ran a consulting company for a dozen years, started a nonprofit focused on technology and sustainability. It was a green rating system for electronic products. and left there a few years ago, and am now with imasons. So the common thread is, I guess, an engineering background, an interest in technology, and now really a focus on how technology impacts society with a focus on giving back and kind of nonprofit administration.
Okay, wow. Okay, I'm sure even that doesn't begin to cover it. I know we've had a chance to sit down a few times, and anyone who may want to also, Jeff and I have a video which is actually on the imasons website as well, which you can find, where we covered during the OCP summit. That's another story. However, okay, moving swiftly onwards, I think what we want to establish here is really, I'm letting you know, Jeff, as well, and everybody, I never thought I was going to work in a data center, in and around one, in one. It wasn't what I set out to do. I've had many different paths that I've taken, anything from music, medical, you name it. Basically, I've kind of done it and tried it. But then it really happened like quite naturally during the course of a career, where I ended up working in a data center or next to a data center. And I know that most of us who would be, especially maybe of the, I would call this the older generation, so those definitely over 40, that we did not set out to work in an industry which didn't really exist at the time when we were kind of going through, or when we'd made a choice for what we were going to study. And it's like, I'm sure the same is true for you as well, Jeff. Maybe you can give us your side.
You know, I don't have a long background in data centers actually, but I think what's real indicative is that imasons has this advisory council that includes some very senior people in the industry, and we often get them together once a quarter or so and ask what's top of mind, and we ask this question: how'd you get here? Fairly often, and to a person, there's not, you know, these are the operators of some of the biggest and most complex digital infrastructure portfolios on the planet, and to a person, they have the same story as you, Dee, that none of us said when we were kids, I want to run a data center when I grow up, you know, maybe a fireman, but you know, but not that. So that's a really common path, Dee, into the industry, you know, into this industry, as we kind of ended up here rather than targeted it.
I think not only in this industry, but actually, if we're fair to say, in most industries, and actually what most people end up doing, I think, you know, very few people have the luxury of saying, I studied this, I'm now doing this, and I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. Whether or not it's a luxury, I don't know. But, you know, I think really asking someone at the age of 18 or even 21 as well, where things are still forming and ideas are still forming, but still, what we're really going to focus on today is how do we provide a path for those who have decided that this is the industry in which they're going to be active. So really the question, how do we change the fact that there has been no path, or there has been no official path maybe into the data center industry? And where we're talking about the, you know, the roles and positions of today. So we know that the tasks in a data center are many and different in their nature. And when we think about a data center operator, usually we have in mind more or less a technical figure, but we know that the reality is much more complex. I know we will come to it, but the roles and positions in the data center today, and of course, it's important to say, because the needs and challenges of a data center of, let's say, 15 to 20 years ago are different from today, and will be different in about 10 years from now. And today, like, what are the most needed roles? Jeff?
That's a great question. There was a recent study by report in Data Economy, kind of laying out what are the positions in most demand, and one of the things that points out, as you were saying, Dee, is the breadth of positions needed in digital infrastructure is huge, from accounting to sales to, you know, logistics and supply chain management, and the things you'd think of more like network engineers and everything. But it turns out that the highest demand jobs that are needed in this report were things like operations and process management. Well, I come out of a manufacturing background, a hardware manufacturing background, and that's what a lot of people there did. So I think there's opportunity for people to transition. But other things like facilities management, heating and cooling, HVAC, you know, technology management. So We need just about every possible, job stream that exists.
Yeah, I mean, I think previously it would have been hard for Europeans, especially to really understand that there are shortages, as we've always heard reported over the last 10 years from the US, really. I think about even 10 years ago, we were hearing some things about that. I know that they're becoming more acute at the moment, and I know especially in Northern Virginia, if you have any of these kinds of skills, you are very, very sought after. And it seems like a lot of data centers, one of their big worries, or one of the things that they're saying that is holding them back somewhat, is that skills shortage. And they're having to bring people in who are maybe from other regions of the country or from other places in order to cover those. But I think this particular table here, which tells us which of these data center skills are most in demand, is actually super, super interesting. So Jeff, maybe you can tell us about this guy, Lee Kirby, and what it is that Lee Kirby is covering.
Sure, Dee. So Lee, as many people know, was the past president of the Uptime Institute, and he's now the CEO of an organization called Salute that's doing great work to bring veterans into the workforce. And there's a quote from him pulled out of Data Center Knowledge, and I'll just read it. It's on the screen, but I think it's a great quote. We as an industry are young in that we formed in the last 20 or so years. Those that started in the industry are now starting to retire. Through normal growth, we'd be able to handle that, but with an industry that's doubling in size every 4 or 5 years, that means a doubling in requirements as well. As I mentioned, when we get our advisory council together and ask them kind of what's top of mind, you have the head of compute for Microsoft and Google and Facebook, and often what they say is we built this thing. We've put the last 25 years of our lives into building this thing, and we don't see the people coming up behind us with the breadth of experience that we have, and we're not really sure what the succession plan is as we call in rich or retire out of this industry. It's not quite sure how we're going to maintain, our experience goes with us. And so that's a real concern in the industry, is how do we maintain the flow of talent and people and not lose the experience that was built up by building this thing,
Absolutely. So maybe again, here we are really zoning in on where in the world people are needed most now. And I think one of the important things before anyone starts jumping regarding these numbers is that this is on a percentual basis rather than an absolute basis. I think if we looked at Northern Virginia alone, we all know that it's a very, very hot market. And we also know that the skills demand and skills shortage is extremely acute. But we see places here like my own hometown, Dublin, here on the hot list. It just means that percentually there are many data centers being built. And of course, that means that it's one of those hot markets because it's expanding rapidly for itself. But maybe, Jeff, you can also talk to the chapters within imasons and what you're also seeing or hearing from those different groups of people around the world.
Yeah, thank you, Dee. As you mentioned, it's interesting that the demand for digital infrastructure positions is not all in the Silicon Valley or Northern Virginia. It's really all over the world. All these places are suffering from lack of people. From EMEA, the hot growth areas of, you said, Dublin, Amsterdam, Copenhagen, and the Asia Pac region. The growth in Singapore and Sydney is crazy. These people are starving for people. And that's really one reason imasons, despite the fact we started in North America, we're doing what we can to grow our membership and serve the data center industry globally. So last year, at the start of last year, when I joined the organization, we also hired a co-executive director, Simon Allen, based in London, who's been really helpful and really effective at helping us grow in EMEA. We had organizing meetings for local chapters last year in Dubai, Italy, the Nordics, So that's going very well. And this coming year and really moving into next year, we expect to continue to grow more in Asia and pick up more members and local chapters. And again, back to the topic of this this meeting, they all share this common challenge of needing more people.
Okay, we are going to get very specific now regarding imasons and how imasons and how you also propose solving this particular problem, solving this shortage. And of course, it's not just you, Jeff, who is tasked with this alone. I think it's all of us, but we'll come back to that. So maybe you can tell us, first of all, really in depth regarding imasons. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, thanks. We just completed in first quarter a strategic planning process for Masons and really focused on three ways to help address the bridge the talent gap is how we phrase it. And the first is improving the education pipeline. And we'll talk more about this, but you know, it's striking today that you know, there aren't very many places where you can go to get a degree in digital infrastructure engineering, as an example. It just doesn't exist in the education pipeline. That's one of our challenges. The second thing we decided to focus on is increasing diversity. You know, if we look around any of our meetings, any of our companies, you're struck by you know, the faces in the room. It's a lot of men, a lot of white men, a lot of older white men, actually, at the end of the day. And one of the readiest sources of talent we have is just increasing the diversity. These are people, you know, with great experience, ready to work. We just need to be a little more welcoming, I think, in our industry to bring these people in and make use of them in our workforce. And the third is, it's an invisible industry, and we'll talk more about that also, but we wanted to focus on increasing the public's awareness of the digital infrastructure industry.
Okay, and when we're talking about the education of data centers tomorrow, Jeff, where you're talking about your objectives to increase the quantity and the quality of that education, I know you have this scholarship program, which is something that I myself got very excited talking to you about the first time when we met for that beer in Portland. And I just think it's an excellent way. Like, of course, it's also a way to market this, because I don't think that the breadth or the number of people are going to be able to come through it, but it still really helps to get the word out there, and it does help to provide a very, very worthy training and education program to those who want to especially get into this industry.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. We do have a scholarship program. It's going really well. You know, we set the program up in a little bit atypical way. We decided that we would identify digital infrastructure specific training programs and offer scholarships to all the students that are in or wanting to enter those programs. Rather than sort of set a high bar for the very best students or the very most needy students, we wanted to focus on you know, fueling digital infrastructure education. So our goals, we had a few goals in this. One was that we wanted to send a signal to the universities that we want more training programs around digital infrastructure. And then, of course, we wanted to just encourage students to follow that path. So we've now identified, oh gosh, I think it's 25 or so digital infrastructure specific training programs at 13 institutions in the US and Europe. And imasons provide scholarships to students in and entering all of those. And consistent with our diversity goal, our focus is to, our goal is to award 50% of our scholarships at least to women in the industry. And that's been going really well so far.
Fantastic. Really happy to hear that. And then you know, I don't know, with this 1 million challenge and everything like that, how would you like people to take part in that, or how would you like people to contribute?
Great. So one thing you need in order to you know, award scholarships is you need, you know, money flowing in to feed the students. So we've launched $1 million challenge. You know, the unicorns in our industry, the venture capitalists are looking for a 20-fold return on their money. We think we can deliver that. Why not go for $1 million? We're asking people to donate to the imasons $1 million challenge. We take donations from individuals. We've received a number of those, including Surreal Choksi, CEO of Vantage, and his wife Bijal, as an example, donated $10,000 personally to the iMason Scholarship Fund. And Surreal received a gold medal on stage for his contribution, for their contributions to the fund at our meeting last week. We also have food for thought dinners. This is a intimate gathering of 10 or 12 people in a local area. We've had them in the Bay Area in Phoenix, just to get together and talk about what's top of mind. But we get sponsors to support these dinners, so it doesn't cost anything to attend. But the sponsor covers the cost of the dinner and makes a $5,000 donation to the scholarship fund. And so just by attending, you're driving scholarship donations, and the sponsor company gets the representative of the company also gets a $5,000 gold medal as an education champion, and a great opportunity to take a photo. So these are the kind of things we're trying to do to build community in the data center industry and fuel scholarships.
Is there any way of sharing, maybe very concretely, from the $1 million challenge, for instance, how many scholarships you're funding, or how many people come through that program?
Well, to be honest, we've funded just about every applicant that has applied that meets the basic requirements. That is, they're signed up in a program.
They can sign up, and that's currently the requirement. Very good.
Program of this digital infrastructure specific. So we have this list. Sign up for one of those programs, apply for a scholarship, and you will be awarded a scholarship. So at this point, we've awarded, I think it's a dozen scholarships or so. We just awarded one, interestingly, a couple weeks ago from a student in India who's wanting to attend Southern Methodist University's master's program. We awarded him a $5,000 scholarship, and he's heading to Texas to begin his education there. So that was kind of fun to correspond with him and do that. So it covers anybody anywhere in the world, and what we really need is more people to apply, particularly more women to apply. It's actually a challenge right now. We do have a few more men applicants than women, and pretty soon the lack of women applicants will begin to limit what we can award. So we really want to encourage people to make women aware of it and apply.
Are you working together with any of the universities, with any of the the Clemsons of the world, or anyone else with either HPC, supercomputing, anything like that, in order to help or to get them to promote it as well to their prospective applicants? Is there anything like that you're doing?
So Clemson, I'm not aware of their program. I'm not sure if they have a program that's focused on digital infrastructure. We don't. Again, that's our primary requirement is that the program is focused on digital infrastructure, not high performance computing, not computer science, not electrical engineering, but something that's digital infrastructure or data center engineering or data center operations, that kind of program. And one of the things we are trying to do is to get the developers and teachers of those programs together to build a global community around the community that is teaching digital infrastructure education as a way of kind of beginning to harmonize and develop more common curriculum, to share curriculum materials, to sort of build up a stronger base of communication within this community of people that are doing this digital infrastructure education. And my long-term goal is to begin to develop like accreditation requirements around something like data center or digital infrastructure engineering as a recognized kind of branch of engineering, as an example, that you can actually get a degree in. That doesn't exist today, and there's no accreditation program for it. And I think as a community, we could do that.
The reason I brought up Clemson, so Submer has been recently working together with Clemson. We're also funding some direct research there as well. But why I also say it in this context is because even from their computer science program and from computer engineering and whatever else, they believe that many of their graduates will end up working in a data center environment. It's a very natural fit. The demand is there. You know, they see maybe those who will go on to some kind of more research, who may work then for some of the research centers, of which you've got fantastic ones in the US. And also, of course, here in Europe. I was with CERN this morning, with PIC as well. Lots of great people here in Europe who are doing the same. However, I don't know whether it could be considered later on broadening it a little bit, but you know, that's something we can take either offline, or we can also see if anyone has any comments of that. I would be very interested to see. Anyone has any questions related to that? That'd be very interesting to hear. Okay, let's move on. And we're talking about diversity here. Yeah, we know that women comprise of far too little of the data center workforce. You already mentioned it. A bunch of white old men, basically, is what you have in most cases. Although working in the data center area, you have a lot of people who crossed over from other areas who may be a little bit younger in that regard, and they kind of fell into it. But maybe from your focus, and especially on the gender diversity with the infrastructure masons women, maybe you could talk us through that.
Sure. So as you said, the figure I often hear is more like 10% in the industry are women. I wouldn't argue with 6. It turns out that the women represent about almost 18% of iMasons membership, but we've made a concerted effort to try to be encouraging and open to women. And one of the things we've done is almost since inception started, as you said, Diarmid, I Am Women's group, just to create a community around women in digital infrastructure, and that's been very well received. It's led by Mercy Manning, now at Aligned, and she's done a great job of building community around women. One of the things we did that was great fun is last year at the Data World Congress in Monaco, we made a diversity award, iMasons Diversity Award. And let's go to the next slide. There's a picture of that. So this is a picture taken at the awards ceremony. That's Terry Simkin holding the award. She accepted it on behalf of Rob Roy, who's the CEO of Switch, who was the winner last year. And for obvious reasons, I want to go to the next slide if we can, and show that. This is the picture of Rob and his staff, the executive staff of Switch, of which over 50% are women. And this is the executive staff. This isn't all the women in the company. These are the the top tier people at Switch. So Rob has done a stellar job of recognizing the talent and raising that up to put women in executive positions. And it's worked out very well indeed as a business decision for him. This isn't charity. Rob's a shrewd business person, and he finds talent where he finds it. And he's done a great job. So we wanted to just call out Rob as a leader in this. And we expect to award the next Industry Diversity Award, we think at DCD London in November this year.
Okay, fantastic. Well done, Rob, and well done to the Switch team in that regard. This is indeed something enviable. I have to say, we're also working as Submer together with women in HPC. I know I keep on mentioning HPC and you go the other way. For me, HPC is a subset of the data center industry. It happens to cover supercomputing and whatever else as well. However, it is also an area which suffers acutely from such shortages as well. The same as most other technical industries today. And it's just another industry that we would be also very happy to work with. And maybe, Jeff, who knows, maybe we could bring together the IM women and the women in HPC and something together. There might be an opportunity even in Monaco at the upcoming event, but we can talk about that later on as well. Let's move on.
So before we move on, I did want to share that this year in Monaco, iMasons is hosting what we think will be the hottest social event in the at the conference. That's the Diversity Inclusion Champions Gala, and we're accepting sponsorships for that. There are a few seats left, and only a few, literally. Companies like Submer, thank you very much, have agreed to sponsor that and for $10,000. That includes a donation to the iMason Scholarship Fund and 2 seats at the gala and an opportunity to get a gold medal on stage with all the other award winners. So we think that's really a fun way to raise awareness of women in the industry. So that's an upcoming event here this June that I think will be a lot of fun.
Okay, so if I understand correctly, that goes both towards the diversity part and also then towards the scholarship. Is that correct?
Yeah, the focus of the dinner is diversity and inclusion, but the sort of beneficiary is the scholarship fund. And we're using all the funds from that event to fund only scholarships for women because it's a D&I gala. So why not? We can do that. And what we most need, again, as a call out to the community, is women applicants for scholarships. So help us out.
Okay, and we will come back to that at the end again, because we do have a call to action for everyone here who is listening in or who may be watching this later on. Okay, but let's talk about again, the invisible industry that no one can see, the multi-billion-dollar industry. And what's this DI intro animated video stuff?
Yeah, so one of our ideas is we need to create a catchy, fun video that shows what happens when a kid does a Facebook post or a Snapchat or an Instagram on their phone. A lot of kids seem to think that just sort of happens on the phone, and that's why kids want to grow up to be programmers and app programmers, because they see it happen on the phone. A lot of them aren't aware of the digital infrastructure that's behind the phone. Or you ask them, it happens in the cloud. Oh, okay, but what's the cloud? I don't know. It's just there. Well, the cloud is data centers. It's digital infrastructure. So we want to make people aware of what happens behind the phone. So our idea is to make a little animated video that follows the packets, through the network, and highlights the people and the jobs that make all that happen, because it's not all happening on the phone. And our idea here is to make this video then available on our website, available to iMasons members and probably the public, and put together a little PowerPoint presentation, a 6 or 8 slide PowerPoint presentation, and start a competition within iMasons members to use these resources to go give a presentation at your kids' schools, give a presentation at the local Girl Scout troop, go spread the word about digital infrastructure and hook these kids young, make them aware and tell them how cool the industry is and sort of where your own job fits into this larger industry. And we think we can increase awareness of our industry that way.
Yeah, I know that we have, some of us anyway, our own little hero worshippers at home for what we do. People who know maybe what immersion cooling is, even at a very young age, or whatever other aspects of the ins and outs of a data center. However, I think, Jeff, one of the tacts that we have to take would be very much to, the reason that they worship these app stories. They've heard so many stories of people who've become gazillionaires through the next app, and they heard of all the Angry Bird stories or the whatever else it might be. I think we do a very bad job of maybe producing the rock stars, which are rock stars outside of our industry, which is maybe what we need to do to appeal to the youth, because that's the way people are formed. Like if we're, it might not be the most ethical thing in the world, and people may have other ideas about it, but I think it's definitely one of the things that we can do to also help to raise those people up who are rock stars for us in the industry, like you spoke about Rob Roy, like you spoke about maybe some others.
What do you think? You mean Joe Cava or Christian Bellotti or Tom Furlong? Those aren't rock stars?
Of course they're rock stars, but they're rock stars to us, They're rock stars to
Yeah.
us, but they aren't rock stars outside of the industry. Like even a Werner Fogels, like the CTO of AWS, he's a guy who is worshipped within the industry, but outside nobody knows him. He's not a household name. Or you have people like Lance Crosby of SoftLayer or whatever else it might be. These are people who did an awful lot for the industry and who continue to be part of a wonderful industry that they love. So, you know, they didn't suddenly make their millions or gazillions and then leave. They're actually making their gazillions and then making their next gazillions. Let's see what happens to them after that. Okay. Apart from that, anything else on the awareness and branding? Apart from the fact that our call to action together is to everybody. It is up to us to speak and to carry the message through regarding this wonderful, wonderful industry that we work in. And to say to people, it is an industry which is doubling every couple of years. It is a great place for many, like for an interesting career path. I think we also know that many of the CEOs of the large data center companies or data center realty companies today, they actually grew up through the ranks. They were not necessarily people who came in and the founders or whatever else. Some of those have moved on. They were people who managed to grow up through the ranks. Maybe they were stacking and racking and cabling and doing whatever it was at the beginning, or they were even doing operations. But you have such a story?
You know, the best one I know is, I think, Dean Nelson, the founder of imasons, now the head of compute at Uber. I mean, he talks about getting out of high school to thinking college is silly. I don't want to do that. And, you know, going to work in menial jobs and sort of, you know, having the typical teenage forehead slap moment of, oh, this sucks. You know, there's got to be a better path forward. And deciding to go talking to his dad, and he said, well, you've always been good at technology stuff. And so Dean went and got a 2-year degree at DeVry Institute of Technology in Phoenix, I think, and saw a presentation by some people from Sun Microsystems who came and presented and hired half his graduating class, including Dean, and you know, loaded them all in a bus or something and said, we're going to the Silicon Valley. And Dean said, okay, where's that? And you know, Dean talks about, you know, going to the University of Sun, starting with chip testing and you know, device troubleshooting, and moving into the data center. And he's now the head of compute for Uber, having spent, you know, 30 years in the in the digital infrastructure industry. So from pretty typical, you know, modest beginnings, like many of us, you know, he's now a really high level executive in the industry.
Okay.
That's how it works, man. You know,
yeah,
jump in the industry and do what you can do.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of sitting down with a couple of other individuals last week at the infrastructure conference, which is run by Structure Research in Toronto.
Right.
And there were an awful lot of people from all of the Equinixes, Digital Realty, particular interesting one with Colt, the Colt CEO, Detlef, also a guy who came from within the ranks, and, you know, some great stuff there. So I think there's definitely the stories to back that up. Okay, I'm also looking a little bit at the time that we have here, and just to move over to talking about the new data centers and new roles and what we see happening in future here. And when we're looking at something like this, we know it's an area of crazy growth, and we've seen a change, although it would be interesting from your perspective, what is the change between yesteryear and today? And then what is the change between today and tomorrow? And when we're talking about tomorrow, it's possibly 10 years down the road, but yeah.
Yeah, God knows what tomorrow will hold. But, you know, I mean, one of the huge shifts we've seen, as you're well aware, is that, you know, the data centers used to be an owned enterprise, you know, data center, and the shift over the last several years, last decade, to, you know, the rise of cloud computing has really shifted the, you know, the architecture. I'm not sure it's changed the nature of the position so much. We do see a rise in robotics and automation and machine learning applications, things like that. But what is striking to me about the coming, you know, the next 10 years or so will be the rise of edge computing and the shift from these, you know, monolithic, you know, data factories, massive data centers in remote areas to, and they will continue to rise and grow like crazy. But even faster, I think we'll see the rise of kind of edge solutions where we need low latency and closer to the point of use. And the rate of build of the edge, I think, will eclipse the rate of build of the really large centralized data centers. Just the rate of build is just staggering what it takes to build out the edge. And that's why you see so many companies chasing this business opportunity. So just the, how it's evolved from in-house to large data factories to a mix of data factories and edge deployments, closer to the point of use and where latency is low. It's been a remarkable shift, I think.
It's also changing the OEM or ODM landscape as well to a great deal. I mean, lots of the household names that we know, HPE, Dell, Supermicro, everything like that. Of course, a lot of the hyperscalers who took up 70% of all of last year's capacity, they're not using those particular vendors. They have, according to standards, they're able to have a bespoke design or a design which they've standardized, which can be built by those. So, of course, in a hyperscale situation, it makes a lot of sense that you are driving that cost down per unit in order to serve that, because it's growing at such a phenomenal pace. And we know as well that in the past, you used to have a hodgepodge of different manufacturers or different kit according to how you acquired it. And now I think people are very much standardizing what they have, or working in particular with one vendor, or at least trying to in that way. So I think that's one of the changes that I've seen, and definitely as with Submer, we've actually attracted quite a lot of our staff because they see the green picture, or they see the future, or contributing towards the future of our planet. Right. And I think as well, we know how hungry and how dirty data centers are. Especially in some areas in Northern Virginia, especially as well. I think we've got to look at the power providers there. I'm not going to call anyone out, but people, you know who you are. And the point is that providing like green power through renewables, I know in the North America, natural gas is also in there as well. It's not considered that in other places, but it is a natural resource which can be used in a fairly clean way. But it wouldn't necessarily be renewable. That's a different story. Anyhow, I think that that's how things are changing now, and that these people, so in other words, I think we're going to see a couple of different industries come together, which were separate beforehand, that had to do with the robotics and automation, the electricity generation or cogeneration. And of course, when you say what's at the edge, everyone's description of edge is so different that we don't really know what is going to be the or what are going to be the roles, because site selection changes according to a lot of things. It's going to be under towers. However, it really brings the people who are working in telecommunications much closer than, again, I think, to the data center piece. Okay, interesting. So this is a program that you spoke to me about, Jeff, what you were talking about, Salute.
Yeah, I do want to touch on Salute. I think it's really an exciting opportunity. Lee Kirby, we mentioned earlier, is the CEO of Salute. He developed Salute. So it's a fascinating business model. Lee is a military vet, U.S. military vet, and saw both the need, the job needs of military vets, and also the demand within our industry for people with that kind of skill and background. And so Lee connected the dots. So Salute's business model is they hire vets immediately, actually hire them, and then train them, and then subcontract them to work within some of the data center industry companies. And I want to announce that imasons is proud to partner now with Salute to help promote Salute within our industry. We just did filmed a video at our meeting last week with Lee and with Randy Brockman, the CEO of EdgeConneX, who's a big customer of Salute. EdgeConneX employs Salute veterans in 5 countries around the world. So this has been, I think, a great success. Salute has put over 1,200 military vets to work. Their business model is, again, to hire these people, train them, contract them, and then try to get the companies to hire them as direct staff. So Salute is a path into the data center industry from knowing almost nothing even some of the people that the Lee takes on are actually homeless when he takes them on, and gives them a job immediately, trains them, and after a year or two, they're employed by somebody like EdgeConneX, in the data center industry, where they find themselves, on a career ladder in a lucrative industry. So congratulations to Salute, and we're very proud to be partnering with them.
Okay, I think it's also fair to say, as a commentary, of course, about 60–70% of our audience, both now and afterwards, are probably US based. And we know that the data center world, even though we saw the heat map and we saw where is hotting up and where the growth is, and I know from research that I saw last week at the infrastructure conference that there is more or less, we will call it a relative slowdown, but it's only because the rest of the world is kind of trying to catch up to the US in that regard. However, Digital Realty, Equinix, EdgeConneX, CyrusOne, countless other data center, realty data center companies are US based, are US focused. So obviously it's a great way for them to give back in their own way. But also, as you mentioned, this is happening also even in the UK or in other places.
Exactly. Lee told me that they're just starting up their UK, they're programmed to use UK military people. So it's not intended to be based in the US, although that's where he started. But okay. He has ambitions.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So let's go back to what everybody outside can do, right? And great picture to Jeff Hardy, of course. We're very proud of that. Fantastic. So you can join iMasons. And there's the link right there, imasons.org/join. As you mentioned previously, Jeff O, you can sponsor the D&I Gala. And anyway, at Monaco, in and around the whole data center, what is it called again, the event? I forget, please remind me.
Our diversity and inclusion gala, or the broader conference.
The broader conference.
What is it? Data Cloud World, I think, is what brought it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. I know we have it written in about 2 slides time here, but I know that Submer will be there in Monaco. You're going to be there too. You're also talking about hosting a food for thought dinner, which is something that people can do in any place around the world. Exactly. Get a number of professionals together. People can also mentor some of these scholarship students. I know this is something that a lot of companies do anyway. I know they take on, we'll call them apprentices, whatever else it may be. This is something which is really worth putting your time into. Even if you're putting in for a short amount of time, you're going to be doing the industry a favor. You're helping people to see that it's a great industry to be in. And then, Jeff, you can talk about supporting the DI awareness and the...
Right, so I talked about that video. We're trying to pull the resources together to get it actually produced. So if people out there have, physical resources such as, some of the video already produced, or they want to put some money towards helping us storyboard it and produce it and, get it out there so it's a resource to the community, we'd welcome any support we can get.
Brilliant. And then, of course, hiring women and vets. And we're not talking about veterinarians here, although that would also be interesting. What? So veterans, very good. I'm sorry. The first thing I see when I see vets, I'm not from the States, so immediately it goes to, this is where I bring my dog when my dog is sick. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about veterans, people who've dedicated quite a bit of their time and quite a bit of their lives in order to support their countries and maybe even supporting peace initiatives in different places. So fantastic. We now come to the section which is regarding questions and answers. I know that we're running over time. We did get started late though, however, I would like to remind as well. So what we're going to do is, I know we've had an absolute ton of questions, Jeff. So we're going to try and go through some here. So let's, oh wow, okay. This is going to take quite a bit of time. So can you flick up to the top here, Matteo, and let's see what we're going to pick out. So to anyone who hasn't actually seen Matteo live, he is here working away here, trying to help us here in the background. We really have so many. So let's just stay with that one here. Just go up one tiny second, please, Matteo. So we have here from a Richard. He thinks that almost all universities in Europe have a cluster, a small DC that involves students to help out with operations. That's an interesting point. And then I'm just trying to pick, because there's so many threads in here, and it's great. People have been chatting all the way through this. I really, really think this is great. Thank you, people, for all being involved. We have here, the challenge with learning about data centers is the hands-on experience. This comes from Bill. You just can't pick everything or pick up everything from books and labs. You need to spend time in a data center, and different kinds. Very much so. And this is something where I have to say, when we are taking on staff, and I've always seen this throughout my career, hosting cloud, data center, whatever it is, people who are from outside of the industry, you're trying to help them. I'm trying to say, don't pick up absolutes, because there's so many variants of everything. You're trying to grasp a concept, and you will only really grasp it once you've been exposed to so many different variants of something. At the end of the day, yes, a server is a server, but it comes in many shapes and forms. There's so many different forms of connectivity. There's so many ways to skin a cat. So absolutely great. Thank you. And so the specific question from Bill here is to you, Jeff. What does iMasons do to solve the talent gap? They ask all of their millennial iMason members to stand in front of the room and take questions. True story. I like this. You know what that's from.
Yeah, I think what Bill's referring to is we had a meeting last week in the Bay Area at which we were talking about all these issues, and Julie Albright just recently published a book called Left to Their Own Devices, talking about how people were raised with digital technology and mobile digital technology are different and view society different and have different ambitions and goals. And we did have all the millennials in the room stand up. There were about 10 of them in the room, stand up in front of the room and sort of talk about what do they want from our industry. It was a really interesting conversation. But that's an example of the kinds of things we're doing. We're trying to shape the industry to appeal more to millennials with the recognition that whether they are a little different than most of us who have gray hair, and given that they are the workforce, we have no alternative but to, they will shape our industry. We can't really shape them. So it was a really interesting conversation as to how to support, millennials in our workforce.
Mm. One of the suggestions has been, of course, here to bring those millennials and people actually into data centers and to have that hands-on experience. I think that's fantastic. And I think that that's something that could be started as another initiative. In other words, to say, well, here's a practical way, and that we would get lots of different data centers involved and people who are willing to actually run a program like that. That is an excellent way. I really like that suggestion.
One of the things that iMasons does is we do offer data center tours. We organize them. We've done them at Facebook in Texas, at a digital realty facility in Nova, Northern Virginia, in conjunction with Northern Virginia Community College and students there. And it's been a really interesting experience. Some of the kids are really engaged, we find, and they sort of get interested in the industry. And I will tell you that it's not uncommon also for some of the kids to, I think, be pretty glassy-eyed and leave. You can just kind of read it on their faces. They're thinking to themselves, why would I want to work in this?
With a tear in their eye, Jeff, yeah? The glassy eyes?
Yeah, well, I think they're saying, why would I want to work in this, in this area, seeing diesel generators and windy data centers is not all that interesting or fun. Do I want to spend my life there? I'm not sure it's what I aspire to. So I think data center tours are interesting, and we also need to find a way to show the interesting part of what's behind that.
But
just
maybe
is not all that interesting,
Maybe just to make sure that you're amplifying the effort. So I would suggest that in order to provide some form of a template for a high quality, broad scope data center tour. I don't know how many data centers I've seen in my life, right? Yeah. Let's be honest. Like, the quality of the tour largely depends on the person who's showing you around. So if there's a way of providing that where we can really provide the broader scope, put something together just as a template, someone can add their own flavor, they can decide not to use it, but maybe something like that would really help in that regard. Mm-hmm. Okay. Moving on to a question from Renee. So what roles are the women getting into? This is a very good question.
Gosh, the women that participated in the IM women's group range from Nancy Novak, head of data center build at Compass. So she's, very focused on, building data centers, often thought of as a male role, but she's, at the top of the class in that to, executive sales, Amber Caramello at Zayo,
Let's talk
Mercy
about
Manning at Aligned is in sales. So there's lots of women in sales roles, but also women in operations and technical roles. I mean, I think, it's an open field.
I was going to mention actually one of your chapter heads in Madrid, Patricia Hernandez Rodriguez, who is in data center operations with Repsol. And of course, the most natural role in whatever way, shape, or form is a more sales, marketing, something facing to that side of things. However, of course, as you said, operations, anything possible. There's no reason why not for anything at all. But yeah, okay. Moving on to, I'm just having a look at the next questions here, and Matteo is helping me to offer. So there are some congratulations on the scholarship. That's a great idea. That's fantastic. And also from Joshua, he's not aware of any HPC institutions that are looking into this. And maybe this is something that Submer and some others can also very much help with, because this is something that we are actively engaged with. And I know that also in the universities, it's always the same picture, or at least the same type of demographic, or the lack of diversity. So again, this is somewhere that we can work with.
So one of the people I'd want to call out here is in places is the Oak Ridge lab at University of Tennessee. They teach a course in data center engineering where they use the staff from the HPC installation there, particularly Stephen McNally is kind of one of the progenitors of the course. And that they are one of the courses we recognize and provide scholarships to, again, because it's focused on digital infrastructure. If you want to build a data center, how do you go about it? What do you have to think of? The power, the cooling, the network connection, the lease, the land. So they go through all of that, which is so it's one of the courses we recommend, and they are HPC facility.
Okay, no, absolutely, and one of the largest, with I think 3 at least of the top 10 of supercomputers in the world.
Right.
We're also here another comment rather than a question from Joshua regarding the so cybersecurity firms conduct industry awareness talks to teens in their schools, and he can see data center operators doing the same, and it would go a long way to plant seeds. The truth is, seeds need to be planted early and be planted constantly. It's not just a once-off effort.
Right. We find that I think the research shows that people start to make career decisions, particularly girls, start to kind of limit their career options beginning at around the age 12. So I think we need to be in there at about that age to show the faces of women in these positions, and to have girls recognize that that's available to them. I mean, they can do this. They see people that look like them in these executive roles.
Okay, I see that John, our special guest from last time, has also been listening in, just giving us a comment as well that China Mobile would be building 100,000 open edge data centers installed with more than 1 million vanity-free servers, and see the ONS keynote. Very interesting. We're just looking through here some of the other, Matteo, I know there's been so many comments and everything here. Maybe you can just skip down towards the end here, just so we can catch some of the either questions, specific questions towards Jeff or myself. So CS courses to force home labs as project work. This is, do you understand that, Jeff?
Computer science courses to force. I'm not sure I understand. Is there a question? There?
I think there was a conversation in around classrooms and labs that they'll definitely help. Again, it comes down to the practical application. It's like one of my experience has been throughout my career that whilst academia is very good at teaching quite a lot of the aspects, it doesn't mean that you're turning out people who are practically ready today when they set foot in whatever it is their chosen career, that they're going to be amazing. and you have Dr. So-and-so who is going to be starting something. This is not trying to take away from anybody. Please don't misunderstand me. It is simply the fact that there is no substitute for the actual experience that people have in changing what they've learned into something to which they can apply. So I think in keeping with what's happening here. So again, just some more people who are agreeing with us that data center tours are indeed a great idea.
Great, that's great feedback. I also wanted to call out, you talked about labs. I wanted to call out the facility at Helha in Belgium is one of our scholarship schools, and they have a large data center lab that's supported, I think, primarily by Google, I believe. And again, that's another school that we provide scholarships at that provides real hands-on, work in a data center. I'd also mention that most of the CNET courses that we recognize require that you actually have a position in the data center so that you will actually apply your training, while you take it.
Yeah, Jeff, I have to say I'm immensely enjoying this topic, much more than I thought I would. I have to admit. However, I'm just looking back through just one last thing here, and someone again, Richard, one of the most vocal people, really talking about if industry only knew, or asking industry what it is that's needed. And in general, what is needed is a much closer collaboration between industry and the institutions which are available and who are preparing people to come into the industry. We've all experienced this through numerous phases and numerous fads. Myself also in seeing the graduation year of my own brother, where most people in Ireland had graduated with computer science degree, and it was just after the dot-com bust, and it was really, there was nothing there for them to go into, because education reacts to needs, but it's always several years behind because the program can only be put in place so fast. So I think we have to be more closely working together with those institutions in order to. So we're glad that you guys are there. Glad that others are there. I do want us to come to the end, just to draw this to a close here. And I know we have the slide here regarding the next events. I know that there'll be some very interesting stuff at the Euro HPC Summit from Submer. Also, all of the DCD events. So you see DCD Madrid, DCD San Francisco, DCD London. I know that imasons also present at every single one of those events. Also Submer, so we're really looking forward to seeing everybody there.
To share a little bit about what we're doing, and good work on the immersion cooling stuff you guys are doing. I think you guys may be the future. We'll see, but very interesting stuff. So thank you for what you do as well.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Matteo. Thanks, Jeff H. And thank you to the whole Submer team. Everybody take care.
Bye-bye.